Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the story of Enron, a company that was once the seventh largest corporation in America. But just a few months later, its name became synonymous with corporate greed and one of the biggest scandals in history. Let's get into it.
So, just to set the scene for you, back in the year 2000, Enron wasn't just another company. It was a Wall Street darling, a true phenomenon. It was valued at a mind-blowing $60 billion, and everyone was praising it as this beacon of innovation. On the surface, it looked completely unstoppable.
But here's the part that's just staggering. All of that, the $60 billion empire, the sterling reputation, the thousands of jobs, it all went up in smoke in the blink of an eye. From the first real sign of trouble, it took just 24 days for the entire company to go bankrupt. 24 days. So you have to ask, right? How on earth does that happen? How does a company that seemingly has everything just completely crumble into dust that quickly? Was this a case of a few bad apples, or was the whole thing rotten from the very beginning? Well, let's find out.
The whole story, really, it boils down to two key figures. These were the men who built Enron's culture, this environment of greed, insane risk-taking, and ultimately massive fraud.
At the very top, you had the founder, Kenneth Lay. He was the perfect CEO on paper, right? He had a PhD in economics, he was charismatic, and he had friends in really high places. I mean, he was so connected that the President of the United States, George W. Bush, actually had a nickname for him, Kenny Boy. And you know, the crazy thing is, the red flags were there from the very beginning. Way back in 1987, a couple of Enron traders were caught basically gambling with company money and cooking the books. But instead of getting fired, they got a letter from the top brass that pretty much said, "Please keep making us millions." The message couldn't have been clearer. Just make money and the rules don't really apply. So to really kick things into high gear, Lay brought in a new kind of executive, a guy named Jeffrey Skilling. He was a Harvard grad, known for being absolutely brilliant, but also incredibly arrogant and just ruthless. Skilling wasn't just another CEO. He was the guy who would completely reshape Enron's identity. Skilling's entire philosophy was, well, it was basically survival of the fittest. He saw business as this brutal battlefield, and he famously said that money was the only thing that motivated people. So he rebuilt the entire company culture around that one idea. Okay, so you've got this hyper-aggressive culture in place. Now, Skilling needed a tool to make his vision a reality, and he found it in this, let's call it an accounting magic trick, that literally allowed Enron to create profits out of thin air. Now stick with me here, because this is the absolute key to the whole scam. It was called mark-to-market accounting. Normally, a company can only say they've made a profit when the cash is actually in the bank. But mark-to-market, it let Enron book the potential future profit of a deal that could span decades on the very day they signed the contract. Just think about that. They could claim billions in earnings from deals that hadn't made a single cent yet and often never would. When the SEC approved this, it was like they handed Enron a license to print its own money. So this was the playbook. Step 1, you sign some huge long-term deal. Step 2, you use mark-to-market to pretend all the future profits for the next day, 10 years, just appeared in your bank account today. Step 3, and this is a big one, you pay yourselves massive bonuses based on these completely imaginary profits. And the final crucial step, if the deal actually starts losing money, you just dump those losses into a maze of shell companies so no one can find them. It was the perfect illusion. And this is where things just get completely absurd. They booked huge profits on a power plant in India that was a total disaster, a plant that the country couldn't even afford to buy power from. They booked $53 million in profits from a deal with Blockbuster to stream movies, except the technology didn't work and the whole thing fell apart. They even started trading derivatives based on the weather, a business so complicated that almost nobody could question if it was even real. So at this point, Enron is feeling invincible. They're swimming in fake cash, and they turn their attention to a new gold mine, the deregulated energy market in California. And this is where the story goes from being a financial fraud to something much, much darker. This wasn't just about tricking Wall Street anymore. This was about hurting real people. The scheme they cooked up was as simple as it was evil. Enron traders would literally shut down power plants for fake maintenance, or ship power out of state to create artificial shortages. Of course, with demand soaring and supply gone, prices went through the roof. Then they'd sell that same power back to desperate Californians at an insane markup. There are even tapes of traders laughing about it. The final bill for California? $30 billion and rolling blackouts across the state.
But right at the peak of all this arrogance, a single, simple question started to pull a thread that would unravel everything. A reporter for Fortune magazine, Bethany McLean, got on a call with Jeffrey Skilling and asked something so basic, he just couldn't answer it. How exactly does Enron make its money? That one simple question sent a shockwave through the company.
Suddenly, the pressure was on. And just a few months after that question, Jeffrey Skilling, the architect of this whole empire of lies, just abruptly resigned. He claimed the company was in great financial shape. But in hindsight, we all know what was really going on. The captain was the first one to jump off the sinking ship.
With Skilling gone and an internal whistleblower desperately trying to warn Ken Lay about what was happening, the whole house of cards came down. And it came down fast.
It was a complete freefall. Enron's accounting firm was caught shredding tons of documents. The SEC opened an investigation, investors panicked, and the stock price went to zero. But the real tragedy here, the real victims, were the thousands of employees. Their 401ks were stuffed with Enron stock, and the company locked them out of their accounts, forcing them to watch as their life savings just evaporated.
And this right here, this just tells the whole story, doesn't it? On one side, you have the executives, who cashed out more than $700 million. On the other, 20,000 employees lost their jobs, their pensions, their entire futures. The average severance they got? $4,500. It's just a stunning picture of two completely different realities. So, what about the mastermind of it all, Jeffrey Skilling? Well, he was sentenced to 24 years in federal prison, but he ended up serving less than half of that. He walked free in 2019. And now, for the final, truly unbelievable twist to this whole saga, Jeffrey Skilling is reportedly back in the game. He's been meeting with other former Enron executives, and they're supposedly launching a new private company back in the energy sector. He can't run a public company, but a private one? Apparently, that's just fine. You know, the biggest irony of all, Enron's official company motto was Ask Why. For years, as the stock soared, it seems like nobody, not Wall Street, not the regulators, not the press, bothered to actually do that. And when you look at how it all ended and the fact that Jeffrey Skilling is a free man trying to get back into business, it feels like a question that's more important to ask now than ever.
Subscribe to the Hub of Crime Analysis.